Grab my hand. Grab it, or you drown in this car." The water was already past her mouth when the most feared crime boss in Chicago smashed through her window and reached into the dark for a woman he'd never met. 10 minutes earlier, someone had sliced her brake lines. 10 minutes earlier, someone had decided Emma Callahan should die alone at the bottom of a freezing lake, and they were someone he trusted. If you believe a person's worst reputation is never the whole truth, subscribe and stay to the very end. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from tonight? She heard herself say it out loud, the way people do when they're alone and terrified and can't believe what's happening to them. No, come on, come on. Her foot was already flat against the brake pedal, pressing so hard, her whole leg shook, and the pedal did nothing. It went down soft and useless, all the way to the floor, like stepping on a wet sponge. Emma pumped it again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Why aren't you stopping? Why aren't you? The car kept accelerating down the slope. It had no business accelerating down, and Emma's hands were locked so tight on the wheel that later she'd find bruises in the shape of her own fingers. She did the thing you're supposed to do. She reached for the parking brake and hauled it up. The lever came free in her hand, loose, disconnected from anything, and she stared at it for half a second. That felt like an hour, this dumb plastic handle sitting in her palm, attached to nothing. That doesn't just happen," she whispered. "That doesn't just come off." And some cold, clear part of her brain, the part that had spent 11 months reading financial records other people didn't want read, said the thing she didn't want to hear. Someone did this to you. She didn't have time to be afraid of that thought. The barrier came up out of nowhere. She felt the wheel wrench, felt the impact go up through her arms and into her teeth, heard a sound like the whole world tearing in half. Then the front of the car dropped, and her stomach dropped with it. And there was one weightless instant where she thought absurdly of her mother, of the last voicemail she'd left and never returned. Then the water hit. It came through the vents first, a thin freezing spray across her ankles, and Emma gasped because it was so cold it didn't feel like water. It felt like electricity. The car tilted forward and started to sink nose down, and the water climbed her shins, her knees, and her mind finally caught up with her body and started screaming. Okay, seatbelt. Get the seatbelt." Her fingers were already numb. She jabbed at the buckle and missed. Jabbed again and missed again. "Come on, Emma. You've done this 1,000 times. Push the button." She pushed it. The belt released. She almost sobbed with relief, and then she reached for the door handle, pulled it, and the door didn't move. She threw her shoulder against it. It didn't move. The water outside was already too high, pressing back with more force than she could ever fight, and she understood in a way that made her whole chest seize up that the door was not going to open until the pressure equalized, and the pressure was not going to equalize until the car was almost full. Almost full meant almost drowned. "The window," she said. "The window, the window." She hit the button. Dead. She hit it again, holding it down, and nothing happened, because the electrical was already gone, and the water was at her waist now, and she twisted around looking for anything a headrest she could pull out and swing, and her hands closed on the passenger seat, and there was nothing there to save her. That was the first moment Emma Callahan truly believed she was going to die. Not feared it. Believed it. There's a difference, and she'd never known the difference until that exact second. She thought about screaming for help and understood there was no one to hear. She thought about her phone and realized it was somewhere in the footwell underwater, useless. She thought God help me about her father dead 9 years, and she thought about how she'd told her sister 2 days ago that she was onto something big at work, and how her sister had said, "Emmy, be careful, those are not nice people," and how Emma had laughed. The water reached her collarbone. She tilted her chin up. The cold made her heart stutter. "Somebody," she said to no one, to the dark, to the shrinking pocket of air at the roof of the car. "Somebody, please." And then, impossibly, there was a light. It swept across the surface above her, a beam cutting down through the churning water, and Emma's whole body lit up with a hope so violent it hurt. She screamed, then really screamed, wordless, pounding the flat of her hand against the glass. She saw a shape hit the water. A man. She saw him go under and come up and go under again, fighting toward her, and she pressed her face to the last inch of air, and she thought, "Don't you dare pass out. Don't you dare. He's coming. He's actually coming." His hands hit the window from the other side. She saw his face for 1 second through the glass. Dark eyes, jaw set, absolute focus. And she saw his mouth move, and even through the water and the glass, and the roaring in her ears, she understood him. "Cover your face." She turned away. Something struck the window once, twice, the third time it went white and spidered and burst inward, and cold and glass came in together, and then his hand was through the gap, his whole arm, and he had her by the front of her jacket. "Grab my hand. Grab it now, or you die in this car." She grabbed it. He pulled, and the car fought him, and the water tried to keep her. And for a second, she was stuck half in and half out with the frame dragging against her hip, and she heard him snarl through his teeth. "You're not staying here. You understand me. You're not staying here." And then she was free. He got an arm across her chest and kicked for the surface, and the last thing Emma remembered clearly was breaking through into the air and taking a breath so deep and so ragged it felt like being born, and hearing his voice right against her ear, low and furious and strangely steady. "I've got you. I've got you. Stop fighting me. I've got you." Then the world went soft and gray at the edges, and she let go. When Emma came back to herself, she was on her side on hard ground, and she was throwing up water, and a man's hand was flat between her shoulder blades, holding her steady. "There it is," the man said. "Get it out. All of it. Good." She coughed until her ribs screamed. When she finally stopped, she was shaking so hard, her teeth were chattering, and she rolled onto her back and looked up and saw him. He was soaked to the skin, kneeling over her, water running off him in sheets. Older than her early 50s, maybe. Dark hair going silver at the temples pushed back off a hard, handsome face. He wasn't looking at her with the panic she expected from someone who'd just pulled a stranger out of a lake. He was looking at her the way a man looks at a problem he's already 3 steps into solving. "Can you hear me?" he said. Yes. "What's your name?" Emma. Emma Callahan." Something flickered across his face when she said it. It was fast, and she was half drowned, but she caught it. Recognition. He knew her name. "How do you—" she started. "Later." He glanced away from her, back toward the road, and she watched his whole body change, tighten, like a man who'd just heard a sound she couldn't. "Emma, look at me. I need you to answer one question, and I need the truth. Do you understand? I don't. Who are you? You saved my—" before the crash. His voice cut through hers, not loud, but with a weight that made her stop. "Did your brakes fail? Or did your brakes stop existing?" She stared at him. "What?" "There's a difference," he said. "You know there's a difference. I saw it on your face when you were behind that glass. You weren't the face of a woman surprised. You were the face of a woman who figured something out. So tell me, the pedal, did it go soft, or did it go all the way to the floor and do nothing?" Emma's mouth opened. The parking brake handle, it came off in her hand. The pedal went to the floor," she heard herself say. "And the parking brake, the lever, it came off, in my hand. It wasn't attached to anything." The man closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, whatever softness had been there was gone. "Then I'm going to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear it because we don't have a lot of time. Someone wanted you dead tonight, and they failed." She laughed. It came out cracked and wrong, half a sob. "That's insane. That's cars fail. Brakes fail. That happens. That's not—" "Both of them," he said quietly. "At the same time, on a downhill road with a broken barrier that happens to open right onto a lake. You're a smart woman, Ms. Callahan. Don't insult yourself." And there it was again, that cold, clear voice from inside the sinking car. Someone did this to you. She'd heard it before the water was even at her knees. She'd known before she'd let herself know. "No," she said. "No. Why would anybody? I'm a financial analyst. I look at spreadsheets. Nobody kills people over—" Headlights swept across them both. The man was on his feet before Emma even registered the light, and he'd stepped in front of her, and when he spoke his voice had dropped into something flat and dangerous. "Stay behind me." "Who is that?" "Mine," he said. "Probably." Two black SUVs pulled up hard onto the shoulder doors, already opening before they'd stopped rolling. Men got out. Emma counted 4, then 5, and the way they moved fast, coordinated, quiet, made her stomach turn over, because these were not the movements of people who called 911. These were people who were the thing you called 911 about. One of them, a big man with a shaved head, came forward fast and stopped dead when he saw the man who'd saved her. Boss, you went in the water." He looked genuinely rattled. "You're Jesus, you're soaked through. What were you?" "Get a blanket. 2. She's hypothermic, and I'm not much better." The boss didn't take his eyes off Emma. "And Sal, nobody calls this in. Nobody. Not police. Not a hospital. Not a soul. Am I clear?" "Crystal." Emma's heart, which had barely slowed down, took off again. "Boss," she said. The word felt strange and terrible in her mouth. "They called you boss." The man crouched back down in front of her, and for the first time she saw something almost gentle move behind his eyes, like he understood exactly what she was about to feel, and was sorry for it. "My name is Adrian Moretti," he said. And Emma's blood went colder than the lake had ever made it, because she knew that name. Of course she knew that name. She'd spent 11 months buried in the finances of a company called Vandale International. And Adrian Moretti was the name that appeared nowhere in any document, and yet somehow behind all of them, the ghost at the edge of every transaction that didn't make sense. The man? 3 different people had refused to talk about the man. One nervous accountant had called right before he stopped, returning her calls entirely. The last person on earth you want to notice you exist. He had noticed her exist. He had just pulled her out of a lake. "Oh, God," Emma whispered, and she started to scramble backward on the wet ground, her hands slipping, her whole body recoiling. "Oh, my God, it was you. You did this. You people did this to me, and now what? Now you're going to—" "If I wanted you dead," Adrian Moretti said, without moving, without raising his voice, "I would have driven past." That stopped her. It stopped her cold because it was true, and even in the state she was in, some part of her that never stopped analyzing knew it was true. He'd been driving. He'd seen the car go in. He could have kept driving. Nobody would ever have known. Instead, he'd gone into freezing black water in his good coat for a woman he'd never met. "Then why," she said, shaking, "why would you?" "Because," Adrian said, "somebody in my world tried to kill you and didn't tell me. And I don't allow things to happen in my world that I don't allow. Do you understand what that means?" No, I don't understand anything that's happening." "It means," he said, and now he leaned in close, and his voice dropped so low it was only for her, "that whoever ordered your car into that lake tonight broke my rules to do it, which means they went around me. Which means I have a problem in my own house. And you, Ms. Callahan," he almost smiled, and it wasn't a comforting thing to see, "you are the only living person who knows why." The big man, Sal, came back with 2 heavy blankets. Adrian took one, and without any ceremony at all, wrapped it around Emma's shoulders himself, his hands quick and impersonal, and she was too stunned to stop him. Then he stood, dropped the second blanket around his own shoulders like an afterthought, and turned to his men. "The car's going down," he said. "How deep's this lake?" 60 feet in the middle. She went off near the drop." "Good. Let it stay there for now. When they eventually find it, I want it to look like exactly what somebody wanted it to look like. A single woman, a rainy night, a bad road. Tragic. Nobody's fault." He turned back to Emma. "Because as far as the entire world is going to believe starting right now, Emma Callahan drowned in this lake tonight." "What?" She got her feet under her, unsteady, gripping the blanket. No, you can't. I have a sister. I have a mother. I have a job. I have a life. You can't just decide that I'm—" "You have a sister," Adrian repeated, and something in the way he said it made her go still. "Where does she live?" Why? Because if the people who did this find out you survived, he said the next person they use to get to you is her. So think very carefully before you tell me the answer to my question and understand that I'm the only reason you have the luxury of thinking at all. Emma's legs almost went out from under her. Sal caught her elbow. She yanked it away out of pure instinct and then had to grab the SUV to stay upright. This isn't real, she said. This can't be real. This morning I had a coffee. I sent an email about a mortgage. And now I'm supposed to be dead. I'm supposed to just be... Get in the car, Adrian said, not cruelly, almost kindly, which was somehow worse. Please, you're going into shock, and there's a doctor 40 minutes from here who owes me a favor and doesn't ask questions. You can hate me the entire drive. I'd honestly prefer it. But get in the car. She looked at the road. There was nothing there. No houses, no lights, no other cars. The nearest help was miles away, and she was soaked to the bone in freezing dark, and the only person offering her a blanket and a warm car was the most dangerous man she'd ever heard of. And he had gone into the water for her. That was the thing she couldn't get past. That single stupid undeniable fact. He had gone into the water. If I get in that car, she said, and I disappear, and my sister spends the rest of her life thinking her sister drowned. Then in a few days, Adrian said, when it's safe, I will personally make sure she knows the truth. You have my word. Your word. She almost laughed again. The word of a Mafia boss. Something passed over his face, not anger exactly, something older and more tired than anger. You'd be surprised, he said quietly, how much heavier that word is than most. Emma got in the car. She would spend a long time afterward asking herself why. She'd decide eventually that it wasn't trust. She hadn't trusted him. It was arithmetic. It was the same arithmetic that had made her good at her job. Every other option on that road ended with her dead, or her sister dead. His was the only column that added up to alive, so she got in. Shit. The doctor's name was never given, and Emma never saw the outside of the building. Only a bright back room that smelled like antiseptic, and a tired man in his 60s who checked her over with rough, gentle efficiency and asked her nothing except, "Does this hurt?" and "Follow my finger." When he was done, he pulled Adrian aside, and Emma heard fragments, "Mild hypothermia. No water in the lungs, she's lucky. She needs rest, real rest." And then the doctor looked back at her over his glasses with an expression she couldn't read, and said to Adrian low, "This one's not one of yours, Adrian. What is this?" "None of your business, Nico." "It never is." The doctor sighed. "She's stable. Keep her warm. Watch her tonight for shock." He hesitated. "And whatever you're about to drag her into, she doesn't look like she can carry it." "I'll be the judge of that," Adrian said. They put her in a room with a bed and a chair and a locked window, and Adrian sat in the chair, and Emma sat wrapped in 3 blankets on the edge of the bed, and for a long time neither of them said anything. Then Emma said, without looking at him, "Vandale International." Adrian didn't answer. "That's it, isn't it?" she said. "That's the connection. That's why you knew my name. I've been looking at Vandale for almost a year. That's why somebody wants me dead. It's the thing I found." "What did you find?" Adrian said. His voice was very controlled. "No." She turned and looked at him. Her fear was still there, huge, sitting on her chest. But underneath it, something else was starting to move. Something she recognized because it had gotten her into this in the first place. Stubbornness. The need to understand. "No, you first. You tell me why the name Adrian Moretti is somehow standing behind a company that on paper you have absolutely no connection to. Because I've read every filing that company has generated in 6 years. I've traced money through 4 shell companies and 2 islands. And I never found you. Not once. And that's the thing that scared me most. A company that clean isn't clean. It's scrubbed. Somebody very good and very careful made sure that company had no fingerprints on it. And now you're telling me you're the one everybody's scared of. So which is it? Is Vandale yours, or isn't it?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and then he did something she didn't expect. He laughed. It was quiet, and rough, and it had no joy in it at all. "You really don't stop, do you?" he said, half drowned in shock, sitting 3 feet from a man the newspapers call a monster, and you're interrogating me. "It's the only thing I know how to do," Emma said. "It's the thing that got me here. Might as well finish the job." Adrian's smile faded. "No," he said. "Vandale isn't mine. That's the first thing you need to understand, and it's the thing that's going to matter more than you can imagine. Vandale is not mine. But for the last several years, someone has worked very hard to make certain that if anyone ever looked closely enough, anyone like you, the trail would lead to me. Every scrubbed record, every dead end, every fingerprint they wiped off Vandale was wiped off and pressed onto me instead. So when someone like you finally connected the dots would spell my name, and I would take the fall for a thing I don't even control." Emma's breath caught. Because it fit. It fit horribly well. All those absences in the record, she'd read them as a man hiding. What if she'd been reading them exactly backward? What if she'd been looking at a frame? Who, she said, who would do that to you? That, Adrian said, is the question that puts you in a lake. He stood up and crossed to the window and stood with his back to her, and for the first time all night, he seemed less like the most feared man in Chicago and more like a man who was exhausted and cornered, and had just discovered the walls of his own house were rotten. "For 30 years, he said, I have run my part of this city on one principle. You want to know what it is? People laugh when I tell them. My principle is, I know where every dollar is. I know who moves it, why they move it, and where it sleeps at night. It's how I've stayed alive when men smarter than me are in the ground. I know where the money is." He turned around. "And tonight, Ms. Callahan, I learned that for years there has been money moving through my world that I did not know about. Deals I didn't approve. Enemies I didn't make, made in my name. Someone has been running a second empire inside mine, using my reputation as a wall to hide behind. And I never saw it. 30 years of knowing where every dollar is, and I never saw it." "And I found it," Emma whispered. "By accident, looking at spreadsheets." "You found it," Adrian agreed, "which makes you the most dangerous person alive to whoever's been running it, because the one thing they cannot survive is me finding out. And you're the thread that leads straight to the answer." Emma sat with that. She sat with it and felt it settle over her like the cold lake water all over again. "So they'll come again," she said. "The people who did this. They think I'm dead. But if they find out I'm not, they'll come again," Adrian said. "Yes. And you're protecting me. Why, really, why not the version you'd tell your men? The real reason." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Because 30 years ago," he said slowly, "somebody moved against my father in a way he didn't see coming. From the inside. From the people closest to him. And by the time anybody understood what was happening, it was too late. And I spent a long time swearing I would never let myself be that blind." His jaw tightened. "And tonight I found out I've been exactly that blind for years. So no, Ms. Callahan. I'm not protecting you out of the kindness of my heart. Don't make me into something I'm not. I'm protecting you because you're the only living proof that I have an enemy in my own house, and I intend to use you to find him and drag him into the light and finish this." "I'm not a tool," Emma said hotly. "No," Adrian agreed. "You're a witness. It's better. Tools break. Witnesses testify." Before Emma could answer, a phone rang. Not hers. Hers was at the bottom of a lake. Adrian's. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and Emma watched every muscle in his face go still. "Don't say a word," he told her very quietly. "Not one sound." He answered it. And he put it on speaker, and he held one finger to his lips, and he watched Emma's face the entire time, like he wanted to see her reaction as much as he wanted to hear the words. "Adrian." The voice on the phone was smooth, warm, familiar-sounding, the voice of a man who was smiling. "You're up late." "Couldn't sleep," Adrian said. His voice was completely relaxed. Emma stared at him, at how effortlessly the tension vanished from his tone. You know how it is. Getting old. What's the occasion, Victor? No occasion. Well, a small laugh. One thing. That analyst. The one who was sniffing around the Vandale accounts, the little accountant that was making everybody nervous. Callahan. Emma's hand flew to her own mouth. What about her? Adrian said. Handled, the voice said pleasantly. Sad thing, really. Car went off a road out by the water. Terrible weather tonight. They probably won't even find her till morning. I wanted you to hear it from me before it hit the news. I know how you feel about loose ends. Consider it a gift. One less problem in the world. Emma felt like she was drowning all over again, sitting perfectly still on a dry bed. Adrian looked at her the whole time. And when he spoke, his voice didn't change at all. It stayed warm. It stayed easy. It stayed like a man talking to family. That's good work, Victor, Adrian said. I appreciate you telling me. You always did look out for me. Always will, the voice said. Get some sleep, old friend. You too. Adrian hung up. He set the phone down on the windowsill very gently, as though it might break, or as though he might. For a moment, he didn't move at all. Then Emma, barely able to make her voice work, whispered, Who was that? Adrian Moretti stood in the dark room and stared at the phone. And when he finally answered, his voice was no longer warm, and no longer easy, and no longer anything Emma had heard from him yet. It was hollowed out. It was the voice of a man watching 30 years of his life rearrange itself into a shape he didn't recognize. That, he said, was the man who's been at my right hand for 26 years. The man I trust more than my own brother. The man who held my mother's hand at her funeral. He looked up at Emma, and there was something in his eyes that frightened her more than the lake, more than the men, more than any of it, because it was grief. Real grief cracking open in the face of a man who was never supposed to feel anything at all. That was the man I would have told you an hour ago would take a bullet for me without blinking. He picked the phone back up. His hand was steady. Everything about him was steady, except that one raw place behind his eyes. And he just called me, Adrian said softly, to tell me he'd murdered you. For a long time, Emma couldn't say anything at all. She just watched Adrian Moretti stand there with the dead phone in his hand, and she understood in a way she couldn't have put into words that she was watching a man's entire world come apart from the inside, quietly, without a single raised voice, which was somehow the most terrible way she could imagine it happening. 26 years, Adrian said again. He wasn't really talking to her. I gave him a key to everything. Everything. Adrian. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. The man on the phone? Victor. Who is he? Victor Romano. He set the phone down and pressed the heels of both hands against his eyes for a second. And when he took them away, his face had changed. The grief was still there, but it had a lid on it now, and under the lid was something colder and more useful. He came up with me. We were kids together, more or less. He was the one who could talk when I couldn't smooth things over, keep the peace. Everybody loves Victor. Everybody has always loved Victor. He gave a short, ugly laugh. Including me. Especially me. And you didn't know, Emma said carefully. Until tonight, you had no idea. I had no idea. He said it flatly, and she could hear how much it cost him to admit it out loud. You want to know the truth, Ms. Callahan. 10 minutes ago, before that phone rang, I told myself it could be anybody. I told myself I'd find the traitor, and it would be somebody on the edges, some ambitious kid, some outside deal that got out of hand. I let myself believe that for about 6 hours. He looked at her. And then he called me, to brag, to hand me your death like a gift, and watch me say thank you. You did say thank you, Emma said. How did you do that? How did you just sit there and thank him? Because if I hadn't, Adrian said, he'd have known that I know. And the second he knows that I know, you're dead again, and this time nobody's driving by the lake. That landed in Emma's chest like a stone. She wrapped the blankets tighter around herself. So he thinks I'm dead. she said slowly, working it out the way she worked out everything out loud in pieces. He thinks it worked. He thinks the only person who ever connected Vandale to anything is at the bottom of a lake. Yes. And you thanked him for it, so he thinks you're grateful and clueless. Yes. Which means, Emma said, and she felt something shift in her, the first small flicker of a thing that wasn't fear. Right now, for the first time in you said years, right now you know something he doesn't know you know. Adrian looked at her, and for just a moment, the exhaustion lifted off his face, and something sharp and almost respectful took its place. Say that again, he said. He thinks he's ahead of you, Emma said. But he's not. He just doesn't know it yet. That's the only advantage either of us has. It's the whole game. She was leaning forward now, blankets forgotten. I do this for a living, Adrian. I chase people who think they got away with it. And the one thing they all have in common, every single one, is they get comfortable. They stop being careful the second they believe they've won. You just made him believe he's won. I didn't do it on purpose. It doesn't matter. It's done. He's comfortable now. She swallowed. The question is what you do with it before he stops being comfortable. Adrian was quiet. Then he crossed the room and sat back down in the chair across from her. And he leaned his elbows on his knees, and he looked at her with an intensity that made her want to lean back. You know what I was going to do, he said. An hour ago, before I understood who it was. I was going to find the man responsible, and I was going to end him. Quietly. Cleanly. The way things get ended in my world. That's what I know how to do. That's the only tool I've ever needed. His jaw worked. But you can't do that to Victor Romano. Why not? Because Victor didn't build his little empire alone, and I don't know who's in it. If I kill him tonight, everyone he's connected to scatters into the dark, and I spend the next 10 years pulling them out one at a time while they come for me. And you. He shook his head. No. Killing Victor is the stupid move. It's the move he'd expect from me because it's the only move I've ever made. He looked at her. You just told me he thinks he's won. Fine. Then I want to know everything. Every name, every deal, every dollar. I want the whole disease, not just the tumor. And the only person on Earth who's already halfway to mapping it is me, Emma said. Is you. She should have said no. She knew she should have said no. Every reasonable part of her, the part that had a sister and a mother and an apartment and a normal life waiting for her to come back to it, screamed at her to say no, to demand he take her to a police station, to a hospital, to anywhere, with fluorescent lights and forms, to fill out and a version of the world that made sense. But there was another part of her. The part that had spent 11 months of nights alone with a laptop, chasing a shadow through numbers, telling herself it mattered, telling herself somebody had to. The part that had been right. Somebody had cut her brakes because she'd been right. If I do this, she said, I have conditions. Adrian almost smiled. Of course you do. My sister stays safe. That's not a bargaining chip, that's the whole floor. Anything happens to Rachel. I stop. I walk. I go straight to the FBI. I don't care what happens to me. Done. And when this is over, however it's over, you don't own me. I'm not one of yours. I go back to my life. Something flickered across his face. You may not have a life to go back to when this is over, depending on how it goes. Then I'll build a new one, but it'll be mine. She held his eyes. Say it. You go back to your life, Adrian said. You have my word. There's that word again. It's still heavier than most. Emma took a breath. Then I need my files. Your files are not on my laptop, if that's what you were about to say, and thank God, because my laptop's in the lake. She almost smiled herself. You think I chase Mafia money for 11 months and keep it all in one place with a sticky note password? Everything's backed up, encrypted, off-site. There's a version I can reach from any machine if I have the keys, and the keys are in my head. She tapped her temple. That's the other reason I'm still useful. Not just what I remember, what I can pull back up, Adrian sat back slowly. "You are," he said, "a genuinely alarming person, Ms. Callahan." "You have no idea," Emma said. "Get me a computer." Didn't. They moved her that same night before dawn, to a place Emma never learned the exact location of, somewhere north. A big house set back from everything, the kind of quiet that only money can buy. Sal drove. Adrian sat in the back with her and said almost nothing, and Emma understood he was grieving, and she left him alone, and she was surprised at herself for having the instinct to. By the time the sun came up, she was sitting at a table with a laptop that had been bought new that morning and never connected to anything traceable, and her fingers were flying across the keys, and for the first time since the water closed over her head, she felt like herself again. "There," she murmured. Come on, remember me." Adrian stood behind her with a cup of coffee going cold in his hand, watching the screen fill with folders. "Talk to me," he said. "What am I looking at?" "You're looking at 11 months of my life." She opened a directory, then another, and the numbers started scrolling. "Okay. So, when I started, I wasn't even looking at Vandale. I was auditing a pension fund, boring legitimate and old union fund that had lost more money than it should have. And I found a payment that didn't make sense. $200,000 going to a consulting firm that, when I looked it up, had no employees, no office, no website, nothing. A ghost. And that ghost was owned by another ghost, which was owned by another ghost, and about 6 ghosts deep. Vandale. She pulled up a chart she'd built months ago, a web of boxes and lines that Adrian leaned in to study. But here's the thing that broke my brain. Vandale's real. It's got a building. It's got employees. It's got a board. It looks completely legitimate from the front. And the money that came out of that dead pension fund flowed into Vandale through the ghosts, got mixed up with the legitimate money, and came out the other side clean. She looked up at him. "It's a laundry, Adrian. Vandale is a very large, very sophisticated, very well-disguised laundry. And whoever runs it has been washing dirty money for years and skimming off the top of 100 legitimate accounts to feed it." Adrian set his coffee down. "How much?" he said. "I stopped counting at 400 million, Emma said quietly. "And I don't think I was close to the bottom." The silence that followed was so complete, she could hear the house creak. $400 million, Adrian said, has been moving through my city using my name as a shield, and I never saw 1 cent of it. "That's the part I don't understand," Emma said. "If it's your name on it, how did you not? You said you know where every dollar is." "I know where my dollars are." His voice was very controlled again, which she was learning meant he was furious. "Whoever built this built it in the space between my dollars, in the accounts I don't watch because they're supposed to be too small to matter. In the legitimate businesses I keep clean specifically so nobody looks at them." He pressed his knuckles to his mouth. "It's my God. It's elegant. I hate it. It's using my own discipline against me. The cleaner I keep something, the safer it is to hide dirt inside it, because I've trained everyone to never look there." "That's Victor," Emma said. It wasn't a question. "That's Victor," Adrian agreed. "That's exactly Victor. He always did understand me better than I understood myself." He looked at the screen at the web of ghosts. "The question is whether he built it or whether he's running it for somebody else. Because a laundry this size needs somewhere for the clean money to go, and Victor Romano, whatever else he is, doesn't have anywhere to put $400 million that I wouldn't notice." Emma frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Adrian said slowly, "that Victor is the man inside my house. But somebody outside my house is the one this all belongs to. Somebody who needed a shield found my reputation and found a man close enough to me to hide behind it." His eyes narrowed. "Victor's the door. I want the room." Emma turned back to the screen, and her stomach did something cold and slow. Because there was a name she'd been avoiding. A name she'd found months ago at the very top of the cleanest layer where the washed money finally landed, and became respectable. A name attached to a foundation, a charity, a wing of a hospital, a scholarship fund. The name of a man so well regarded that when she'd first seen it, she'd assumed she'd made a mistake in her math and started over 3 times. Adrian, she said, when the money comes out clean, all of it, do you know where it goes? The final stop. The place where $400 million of dirty money turns into hospital wings and charity galas. Tell me. She turned the laptop toward him. Senator Charles Vandale, Emma said. The company's named after his family, and for the last 8 years, he's been the single largest recipient through his foundation of money that started its life as stolen pension funds and dirty cash. She watched his face. I thought he was a victim of it. Somebody using his family name without his knowledge. That's what I told myself for months because the alternative was, it was too big. But that's not it, is it? He's not the victim of the laundry. No. Adrian said very quietly, and Emma watched something old and terrible move behind his eyes. He's the reason it exists. You know him. I know him. Adrian sat down across from her heavily, like a man whose legs had stopped agreeing to hold him. Charles Vandale. 30 years ago, he was nobody. A nothing lawyer with an expensive name and no money to match it. He stared at the wall. And 30 years ago, my father died. Betrayed. From the inside. I told you that. You did. I never knew who arranged it. I spent years looking. I put men in the ground on suspicion, and I was never sure, not really, not once. And eventually, I decided I'd never know. And I made peace with it. His hands had curled into fists on the table. The lawyer who handled the estate afterward. The one who showed up out of nowhere, so helpful, so smooth, who made sure everything transferred cleanly to me, who I thanked. Charles Vandale, Emma whispered. Charles Vandale. Adrian's voice had gone to gravel. He built his entire career on the money that changed hands the year my father died. And I never once connected it. Because he was so helpful. Because he was on my side. Because everyone told me what a friend he was. He looked up at her and his face was gray. The same way everyone always told me what a friend Victor was. Emma felt the whole shape of it click together, and it was so much bigger and colder than she'd imagined that she had to grip the edge of the table. They've been working together, she said. The whole time, for 30 years. Vandale on the outside, Victor on the inside. Vandale takes your father. Victor keeps you blind, and the two of them build an empire in the walls of yours, using your name to hide it, and your reputation to protect it, and the only thing standing between them and getting away with it forever. Is a financial analyst, Adrian said, auditing a pension fund. Who they tried to drown last night, Emma finished. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian did something that startled her. He laughed, not the ugly laugh from before, but something quieter, almost wondering. 30 years, he said. 30 years I looked for the man who killed my father, and I never found him because I was looking in my world. And you found him in 11 months because you were looking in his. He shook his head slowly. The money. It was always going to be the money. I know where every dollar is. Except I was looking at my dollars. You were looking at theirs. Adrian, Emma leaned forward. I have to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. There's very little left tonight I could like. Everything I have, she said. Everything, all 11 months of it. It proves the money's dirty. It proves it's a laundry. It proves it lands with Vandale. And it does not prove that either of them ordered anything. It doesn't put a weapon in Victor's hand or a word in Vandale's mouth. It's a paper trail, and paper trails prove crimes, but they don't prove murder. She held his eyes. I can bury them for fraud. I can put them away for a very long time for what they did to that money. But your father and me, and the lake, the actual violence, none of that's in the numbers. I can't prove what happened to me last night with a spreadsheet. Adrian was quiet. Then we need Victor to say it, he said finally. Say what? Everything. We need him to admit it. Out loud, to someone, in a way we can use. Adrian stood and walked to the window, and Emma watched the wheels turn. He thinks he's won. You said it yourself. He's comfortable. A comfortable man talks. He brags. He already called me to brag once tonight about you. He turned. So we let him keep believing he's won. We let him get more and more comfortable. And we get him talking somewhere I can hear it. That's Adrian. That's incredibly dangerous. If he suspects for 1 second, I know. If he finds out I'm alive, I know. He'll kill us both, and this time he'll do it himself to make sure it works. I know, Adrian said, and there was something raw in it. Which is why we're not going to give him the chance to suspect anything. Which is why, as far as Victor Romano is concerned, and as far as everyone in my world is concerned, Emma Callahan is a body at the bottom of a lake, and she is going to stay one until the moment I decide otherwise. He held her eyes. You disappear completely. You don't call your sister. You don't email your mother. You don't touch anything that ever belonged to Emma Callahan. You become a ghost. Because the only way this works is if the man who tried to erase you actually believes he did. Emma's throat tightened. You said you'd tell my sister, she said. You said in a few days. And I will, when it's safe. But it's not safe now, and if you contact her now, you don't just risk yourself, you put her in a lake next to you. His voice softened just slightly. I'm not doing this to be cruel to you. I'm doing this because the people who want you dead are very good at it, and the only thing keeping you alive tonight is that they think they already succeeded. The second you're not a ghost, you're a target. Do you understand? She did. She hated it, but she did. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'm a ghost. Good. But I need you to understand something too. She stood up, and even though he was taller than her, even though he was the most dangerous man in the city, she didn't look away. My sister is going to spend every one of these days thinking I drowned. She's going to have to she's going to have to do things, terrible things, plan things, grieve me. And she's a real person, Adrian, with a real heart. And every hour she's grieving me is an hour I did that to her. So when you tell me it's safe when this is over, you don't get to decide. It's not quite safe enough for 1 more week. The day it's over, I go to her. That day. Not a day later. Are we clear? Adrian looked at her for a long moment. You know, he said quietly, most people, when they're this deep in something, with me, spend all their energy trying to figure out how to protect themselves. You're standing there worried about your sister's heart. That's not an answer. The day it's over, Adrian said, you go to her, that day, my word. Emma nodded once and sat back down and turned to the screen and got back to work, and neither of them said out loud the thing they were both thinking, which was that the day it's over was a very long way away, and that a great many things could go wrong between here and there, and that some of them already had. For 6 days, Emma Callahan didn't exist. She worked. God, how she worked. She rebuilt her entire case from memory and backups, cross-referencing, tightening filling gaps, and Adrian brought her whatever she asked for. Records his people could reach that she couldn't account. She'd never had access to the internal architecture of a world no auditor had ever seen from the inside. Between what she'd built alone and what he could open for her, the picture got sharper and uglier by the day. And she watched Adrian in those 6 days become a man she hadn't expected. She'd braced herself for a monster. She'd braced herself to be trapped in a house with someone cruel, someone she'd have to manage, someone whose every kindness was a transaction. And instead, she watched a man move through the worst betrayal of his life with a control that was almost frightening, never raising his voice, never breaking a glass, never doing any of the things she'd imagined mafia bosses did. He got quieter. He got more precise. And in the small hours when he thought she was asleep, she heard him on the phone with people, and the things he said were not the things she expected. She heard him call a woman named Marisol at 2 a.m. to make sure her son had gotten into the program, the one Adrian had apparently arranged, and she heard him listen for 10 minutes, while the woman cried with relief, and she heard him say gruffly, "That's what it's for. Stop thanking me. Go to sleep." She heard him tell Sal to make sure the family of some man who'd worked for him and died. She gathered badly years ago, got their envelope this month, like every month on time, in full. No questions. She heard him once standing at the window in the dark, say to no one at all, in a voice so low, she almost missed it. "I'm sorry, Pop. I should have seen it. I'm going to fix it. I swear to God, I'm going to fix it." And on the 6th night, Emma looked up from the laptop and said, You're not what they say you are. Adrian didn't turn around. You don't know what they say. I read all of it. 11 months, remember, I read every article, every profile, every rumor somebody was brave enough to print. Adrian Moretti, the man without mercy. The monster of the North Side. She closed the laptop. And I've watched you for 6 days, and I keep waiting to see it, the monster. And it's not there. So, which is the lie? The newspapers or the 6 days? Adrian was quiet for a long time. Neither, he said finally. That's the part nobody wants to hear. I've done things, Ms. Callahan. Real things. Things that would make you get up from that table and never look at me the same way again, and you'd be right to. Don't romanticize me. I'm not a good man who got a bad reputation. He turned to face her. But I'm not a monster with no rules either. I have rules. I have always had rules. I don't touch the innocent. I don't touch children. I don't touch people who never chose this life. And in 30 years, I have never once broken those rules. His jaw tightened. And that's exactly what Victor used. He knew my rules. He knew the one thing I'd never do is order the death of an innocent woman who just happened to be good at her job. So he did it himself without asking me, knowing I'd never have allowed it. He looked at her, and there was something almost unbearable in his eyes. He used the best thing about me to try to kill you, and that is the thing I will not forgive. Emma's throat was tight. Then let's make sure it doesn't work, she said quietly. We will. Adrian, she hesitated. When you get him talking, when you get whatever it is you need, what happens then to Victor, to Vandale? What's the ending you're building toward? Because I need to know if I'm helping you catch criminals or helping you kill people, and those are very different things, and I won't do the second one. Adrian looked at her for a long time. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I know what I want to do. I want to put Victor Romano in the ground with my own hands. I've wanted it every hour of every one of these 6 days, and it would be so easy, and no one would ever know. He exhaled. But you keep talking about paper trails and courtrooms and evidence, and there's a thing you don't understand about my world, Ms. Callahan, which is that we don't use those. We've never used those. The whole point of my world is that it exists outside those. He shook his head slowly. And I'm starting to wonder if that's the exact thing that let this happen. If a man like me could just kill his problems for 30 years, maybe that's why he never learned to see them. Maybe Victor got away with it because he knew I'd never look at the paper. I'd only ever look for someone to blame and something to break. Emma stared at him. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in a year, she said. Don't get used to it. But there was no edge in it. She was about to say something else, she never remembered what, when Sal came into the room fast, and one look at his face killed whatever they'd been building in the quiet, and Emma's stomach dropped because she'd spent 6 days learning to read the men around Adrian, and she'd never seen Sal look like that. Boss, Sal said. We got a problem. Adrian went still. What kind? Victor. Sal's eyes flicked to Emma and away. He's asking questions about the lake. The room went cold. What questions? Adrian said. They pulled the car this morning, the Callahan car. Divers out at the lake, some fishermen snagged a line, called it in, and the county sent divers before we heard anything about it. Sal swallowed. They got the car up, boss. And Victor's got somebody at the county. And that somebody just called Victor an hour ago to tell him. Tell him what? Adrian said in a voice like a blade being drawn. Sal looked at Emma, then back at Adrian. The car came up empty, Sal said. No body. Divers went down after searched the whole area. There's no body in that lake, boss, and Victor knows it. And right now, tonight, Victor Romano is standing in a room somewhere trying to figure out how a dead woman climbed out of a sinking car and who was standing on the shore to help her do it. Emma stopped breathing. Adrian didn't move for a full 3 seconds. Then very slowly, he turned and looked at her, and every warm thing that had grown between them over 6 quiet days seemed to freeze solid in an instant, because they both understood the same thing at the same moment, and it was the worst possible thing. The ghost had a problem. Ghosts don't leave empty cars. Victor didn't know Emma was alive, but he was about to. "Sal," Adrian said very quietly, without taking his eyes off Emma. "How long ago did he get that call?" "An hour, maybe less." "And how long," Adrian said, "before he realizes that the only person in this city who was anywhere near that lake that night, the only person who could have been on that shore, was me?" Sal didn't answer. He didn't have to. Emma watched Adrian Moretti's face change into something she'd never seen on it before. Not grief and not fury, but something underneath both of those. Something that had been waiting 30 years for a reason to come out, and she realized with a cold that went all the way to the bone that the 6 quiet days were over, and whatever came next was going to be very, very fast, and there was no version of it where anyone got to stay a ghost. "Move," Adrian said. It wasn't loud. It was almost gentle, and it moved the entire room. Sal was already gone out the door, phone to his ear. Adrian crossed to Emma in 3 steps and pulled the laptop closed under her hands. "Get up. We're leaving this house tonight. It's not safe anymore." "Adrian, wait. There's no waiting. If Victor thinks you're alive, the first thing he does is figure out who was near that lake, and the second thing he does is put people on every property I own, and this is a property I own." He was already moving, gathering the few things that mattered, the drives, the backups. "He knows my houses better than I do. He helped me buy half of them." Emma stood, her heart slamming. "Where do we go?" "Somewhere he doesn't know exists." Adrian stopped and looked at her. "I told you I keep things clean specifically so no one looks at them." "Well, turns out that works both ways. There's one place in this city not a single soul in my world has ever heard of. Not Victor, not Sal, no one." His mouth was a hard line. "I always wondered why I bought it. Some part of me must have known I'd need one door nobody else had a key to." 20 minutes later, they were in a different car. Not one of the SUVs, an ordinary sedan, the kind nobody looked at twice, and Sal was driving, and Adrian sat in the back with Emma, and for the first few miles nobody spoke. Then Adrian's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Emma watched his face, and knew before he said it. "It's him," Adrian murmured. If I don't answer, he knows something's wrong." Adrian's thumb hovered. "The whole game is he thinks I'm blind. The second I go quiet, I'm not blind anymore, I'm hiding." He looked at her. "Not a sound." He answered. "Speaker again." His voice, when it came out, was so relaxed, so warm, that Emma felt sick watching him do it. "Victor, twice in a week. People are gonna talk." Adrian." Victor's voice had changed since the last call, still smooth, but there was something underneath it now, something listening. "Where are you tonight?" "Home. Where else would I be at this hour? Getting old, remember?" A soft laugh. "What's wrong? You sound like something's wrong." A pause. Emma could hear Victor deciding how much to show. "Nothing's wrong," Victor said. "Loose end from the other night. Turns out it's not as tied up as I thought. You know how it is. You handle a thing you think it's handled, and then—" A small, humorless laugh. "The world surprises you." The Callahan thing. The Callahan thing. "I thought you said that was done." "So did I," Victor said softly. "Turns out the lake gave up the car but not the girl. No body, Adrian. Empty car 60 feet down, driver's window broken out from the outside." A beat. "Now who breaks a car window from the outside, Adrian?" "Somebody trying to get in. Somebody trying to pull somebody out." Emma's hand went to her mouth. Adrian didn't blink. "That's a hell of a thing," Adrian said. "You think she made it out on her own?" "No," Victor said. "I don't think she made it out on her own. I think somebody was there." Another pause longer. "You were out that night. I remember. You told me you couldn't sleep. You went for a drive, out by the water maybe." And there it was. The trap laid out, gentle and smiling, the way Victor laid out everything. Emma stopped breathing. Sal's eyes flicked up to the mirror. Adrian laughed. It was easy and warm, and it filled the whole car, and it was the most terrifying thing Emma had ever heard, because it was completely perfectly fake, and she couldn't hear a single seam in it. You keeping tabs on my drives now, Victor? What is this? You think I'm out pulling drowning women out of lakes at my age? In my good coat. A chuckle. I went north, toward the track. You know I don't sleep. I drive, I've been doing it 30 years. If I'd seen a car go in a lake, I'd have called you before I called anybody. You know that. Silence on the line. Emma could feel Victor weighing it, turning it over, and she understood that this right here, right now in the back of a moving car, was the entire game balanced on the edge of a knife, and it all came down to whether 26 years of trust could survive one honest question. Yeah, Victor said finally, slowly. Yeah, I know that. So, find the girl, Adrian said, pressing, now going on offense, the way Emma had told him a comfortable man never expects. If she's alive, she's a problem, and I don't like problems. Put everybody on it. I want her found. And Victor? He let his voice drop, let it get cold in a way Emma now understood was calculated to the last degree. Next time you handle something for me, handle it all the way. I don't like hearing about empty cars. It makes me feel like the people around me are getting sloppy. Are you getting sloppy, Victor? The pause this time was different. Emma heard it land. Heard Victor, the smooth one, the one who always had the words get put back on his heels for the first time in the whole conversation. No, Adrian, Victor said, quieter. I'm not getting sloppy. Good. Then find her, and this time tell me when it's done, not when it's a mess. Yeah, I will. Get some sleep, Victor. You too, old friend. Adrian hung up, and for a moment he sat perfectly still, and then he let out a breath that seemed to come from the very bottom of him, and Emma saw his hand, the steady hand, the one that never shook, trembling just slightly in the dark. That, he said quietly, was the closest I have ever come in 30 years to being caught in a lie by someone who knows every tell I have. You turned it around, Emma whispered. You made him defend himself. I made him choose, Adrian said. Between trusting me and suspecting me. And for tonight, he chose to trust me, because he wants to, because if he suspects me, then his whole plan is exposed, and he's not ready for that yet. He turned to her, but it won't last. He's going to keep pulling the thread, and every day the empty car sits in his head, he's going to trust me a little less. We just bought ourselves time, that's all. Days, maybe. Then we use the days, Emma said. Adrian looked at her, and something almost like a smile touched his mouth. You know, he said, you'd have made a hell of a criminal, Ms. Callahan. I'll take that as the compliment. I'm sure you don't realize it isn't. The place Adrian took her to was small and old and completely ordinary, an apartment above a shuttered bakery on a street where nobody would ever look for the most feared man in the city, and Emma understood the moment she walked in that it wasn't a safe house. It was a life. Someone's actual life, arranged and preserved, books on the shelves, a coat by the door, dust on nothing. Whose is this? She said. Adrian was quiet. It was going to be mine, he said finally. A long time ago, before all of it. There was a version of me that was going to live a small life above a bakery, and I bought this place to prove to myself it was possible. And then I never lived here, and I never sold it, and I never told anyone it exists. He set the drives down on the table. So, now you know one true thing about me that Victor Romano doesn't. Congratulations. That makes you more dangerous to me than the FBI. Emma looked at him for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? She said. Why show me any of it? You could have just called it a safe house. Because, Adrian said, in about 3 days, you're going to have to trust me with your life in a way you haven't had to yet. And trust doesn't run one direction. You've handed me everything, every file, your sister's safety, your own body at the bottom of a lake. He met her eyes. It's time I handed you something back. So here. One true thing. Use it against me if you ever need to. I'd rather you have a weapon and never use it than trust me blind. Blind trust is what got me here. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she said the only true thing she had. I don't think you're the man in the newspapers, she said. I stopped thinking it a few days ago. I just didn't want to say it out loud because saying it out loud makes it real. And if it's real, then I have to figure out what it means that the safest I've felt in a year is in a room with a man who's probably killed people. And I don't know what to do with that. Neither do I, Adrian admitted. For the record, neither do I. They stood there a moment in the strange honesty of it. Then Emma went to the table and opened a laptop, because working was the only thing that made the fear small enough to hold. Okay, she said. If we've got days, here's what we do with them. You want Victor talking somewhere you can hear it. But Victor's careful, and Victor's spooked now, and a spooked careful man doesn't confess into a phone. She pulled up her web of ghosts. So we don't go at Victor. We go at Vandale. Adrian came to stand behind her. Explain. Victor's the door you said. Vandale's the room. But here's the thing about a door and a room, the door reports to the room. Somewhere in all this money, there's a moment where Victor has to tell Vandale that the Callahan problem got messy. Because Vandale is the one with everything to lose. Vandale's a senator. He's the respectable one. If a dead analyst turns out to be alive, the person who panics isn't the mafia advisor who's used to loose ends. It's the politician whose entire life is built on nobody ever looking too closely. She turned to him. You don't crack Victor by scaring Victor. You crack Victor by scaring Vandale and letting Vandale reach down to Victor to fix it. Because when a frightened, powerful man reaches down to his fixer, that's when things get said that can't get unsaid. Adrian stared at the screen, then at her. You want to spook a United States senator? He said slowly, into panicking so badly he incriminates himself to a mafia advisor we're recording. I want to make Charles Vandale believe, Emma said, that his 30-year-old secret is about to come out. And I have exactly the thing to make him believe it, because I'm the analyst who found it, and I'm supposed to be dead. And nothing in the world frightens a man like Vandale more than a witness who won't stay buried. Something kindled in Adrian's eyes. You're going to let him know you're alive, he said. No, Emma said. You're going to let Victor find out I'm alive on our terms, in a way we control at a moment we choose, and Victor's going to have to tell Vandale, and Vandale's going to lose his mind. Because right now, Victor's keeping the empty car quiet, hoping he can clean it up before Vandale ever has to know he screwed up. The one thing Victor cannot afford is for his boss to find out he failed. So the moment we make it impossible for Victor to hide it, the moment we force him to bring the bad news up the chain, the whole thing starts to crack from the top down. Adrian was silent for a long moment. That's a good plan, he said finally. It's a very good plan. And it depends on the two of them not being able to just find you and kill you before it works. Which means the most dangerous part of it is you. Alive. Findable. Bait. His jaw tightened. I don't like it. I don't like it either, Emma said. But it's the fastest way to the ending you actually want, which isn't Victor in a hole. It's the truth about your father out loud from the mouth of the man who arranged it. You don't get that by being safe. Neither of us does. Adrian looked at her, and Emma saw him war with it, saw the part of him that had spent 30 years keeping the innocent out of the line of fire, pushing back hard against a plan that put her directly in it. There's a version of this, he said slowly, where I do it alone, where you stay a ghost, and I take everything you built and I go at them without you, and if it goes wrong, only I'm in the ground. And it'd fail, Emma said gently. Because you'd be the mafia boss going at them, and they'd see you coming from a mile off, and they know how you fight. But they don't know how I fight. They think I'm a dead accountant. Nobody's afraid of an accountant, Adrian. That's the whole point. That's my whole life. Nobody's ever afraid of me until it's too late. She held his eyes. Let me be what I am. Let me be the thing they never see coming. You've spent 30 years being the thing everyone sees coming. Let somebody else carry the surprise for once. And Adrian Moretti, who had never in his life let a civilian talk him into anything, looked at Emma Callahan for a long, long moment. "Okay," he said quietly. "We do it your way. God help me. We do it your way." It took 2 days to build the trap, and Emma built most of it, and Adrian watched her do it with an expression she eventually identified as something close to awe. The plan was elegant precisely because it was small. Emma didn't send a threat. She didn't reach out to Vandale. She did something far more frightening to a man like him. She let a single document surface one page from the deepest layer of her evidence, the layer that connected the clean charity money back to its filthy origin. And she let it surface in exactly one place. A routine regulatory filing, the kind of dry government paperwork that nobody reads, submitted anonymously to an oversight office that had jurisdiction over the pension fund where it all began. "It won't do anything on its own," Emma explained. "It'll sit in a queue for weeks. But Vandale has people watching that office. Anyone that careful does. And the moment that page hits that queue, an alarm goes off in Charles Vandale's world, because it's the one document that should not exist from the one investigation that was supposed to be dead, filed by a hand that shouldn't be able to file anything." She looked at Adrian. "He'll know the instant he sees it that the analyst is alive, because only the analyst could have that page. And then, Emma said he calls Victor, and he's not calm when he does it, and that's the call I want you to hear." But you couldn't just record Victor Romano's phone. Victor was too careful. Adrian had taught him to be careful. So the plan had a second half, and the second half was the dangerous one, and it belonged to Adrian. "There's a place Victor goes," Adrian said, "when something's gone wrong and he needs to think. A club he owns downstairs after hours. He's gone there after every crisis for 20 years. It's where he goes to be safe, to make the calls he can't make anywhere else." Adrian's face was grim. "It's the one place he'd never sweep for ears because it's his, because he trusts it the way I used to trust him." He looked at her. "The night Vandale panics, Victor goes to that club to manage it, and I'm going to be in the walls of it when he does." "That's insane," Emma said. "You'd be in Victor's own building with Victor's own men if anything goes wrong." "If anything goes wrong, I'm dead," Adrian agreed. "Yes, that's the cost. You put yourself in the water as bait. I put myself in the walls." He almost smiled. "Seems fair." "It's not the same, and you know it." "No," Adrian said. "It's not, because if it goes wrong for you, I might still be able to save you. If it goes wrong for me in Victor's club, surrounded by Victor's people," he shrugged. "Nobody's driving by that lake." Emma looked at him and felt something twist in her chest that she didn't have a name for and didn't want to examine too closely. "Then don't get caught," she said. That, Adrian said, is the plan. The document surfaced on a Tuesday. By Tuesday night, Charles Vandale knew. Emma was in the apartment above the bakery, watching a burner phone Adrian had given her, and Adrian was gone. Had been gone for 3 hours. Was somewhere inside a building she couldn't picture in a wall. She couldn't see waiting. And the not knowing was the worst thing Emma had ever felt. Worse than the lake, because at least in the lake, it had been happening to her. This was happening to him, and all she could do was sit in a dead man's apartment and wait to find out if the plan she'd built had gotten the only person she trusted killed. Her phone buzzed. A single text from Sal parked outside the club, watching the door. Victor just went in. Alone. He's spooked. Adrian set. Emma's whole body went cold. She pictured it. Adrian folded into some crawl space or service corridor, a recorder in his hand, holding his breath, while the man who'd betrayed him for 26 years walked in 20 feet away, and she gripped the edge of the table and prayed to a god she wasn't sure she believed in. Inside the club in the dark, Adrian Moretti listened to Victor Romano pace. He'd been in the wall for 4 hours. His whole body ached. He was 53 years old and folded into a space built for pipes. And if any part of him cramped, if he shifted wrong, if he made one sound, it was over. But he'd been still for men before. He knew how to be still. He heard Victor's footsteps. Fast, agitated. He heard Victor pour a drink. He heard Victor pour another. He heard the phone ring. "I know," Victor said before the caller could speak. "I know. Charles, listen to me." And Adrian Moretti in the wall in the dark closed his eyes and pressed record. "Don't say another word on this line, don't you dare!" Victor's voice was nothing like the smooth thing it had been on the phone with Adrian. It was frightened. Raw. "It's a burner. It's clean. Nobody's listening." "Now what happened? Slow down. What page?" "No. No. That page doesn't exist. I buried that page 8 years ago. That page is at the bottom of..." A silence. "Then she's alive. Then the little accountant is alive, Charles, and she has the page. And she's not just alive, she's working. She filed it herself. She wants us to know." Adrian didn't move, didn't breathe, just recorded. "Because it's a message," Victor was saying, pacing, his voice climbing. "She's telling us she knows. Listen to me. This is exactly why I told you 30 years ago, we do this clean, we do this careful, we don't leave." A bitter laugh. "Don't you put this on me. Don't, Charles. I have kept this quiet for 3 decades. 3 decades. Every time it almost came apart, I fixed it. When your first accountant got greedy, I fixed it. When Moretti's father started asking questions about where his money went, who fixed that, Charles? Who made sure the old man never traced it back to you? Me. I did. I've been standing between you and the truth for 30 years, and you're going to lecture me about being careful." In the wall, Adrian Moretti stopped breathing for an entirely different reason. When Moretti's father started asking questions, he'd known. He'd known it for a week, known it in his gut, but there was a difference between knowing and hearing it. Hearing it in the actual voice of the actual man, and it went through Adrian like a blade of ice, and it took everything he had, every scrap of 30 years of control, not to come through that wall with his bare hands. He didn't move. He recorded. "The girl's the problem now," Victor was saying. "Forget 30 years ago. The girl is alive and she has the page, and if she has the page, she has all of it. And if she goes to anyone, federal press? Anyone. It's not just you, Charles. It's me. It's the whole..." He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice had gone very low and very cold, and Adrian recognized it because it was the voice of the man Adrian had known for 26 years, the killer under the smile. "No. Here's what happens. I find the girl. And this time, I don't hand it to somebody else. I don't use one of Adrian's people. I don't do it clever. I do it myself, and I do it slow enough to find out who pulled her out of that lake first, because somebody did, Charles. Somebody was on that shore, and when I find out who..." A pause. "God help them if it's who I think it is," Victor said softly. "Because if Adrian Moretti pulled that girl out of the water, then Adrian knows. And if Adrian knows, silence." "Then I bury them both," Victor said. "The girl and the boss. 30 years I've run this thing from behind that man, 30 years I let him think he was in charge. And if it comes down to him or me, Charles, it was always going to come down to him or me. I'm not going in the ground for Adrian Moretti's father a second time." And in the wall in the dark, Adrian Moretti, who had come for a confession about his father and had just gotten it whole and complete and worse than anything he'd imagined, heard the last piece fall into place. The piece that changed everything. The piece Emma's paper trail could never have found. Victor Romano had killed Adrian's father with his own hands. Not arranged it. Not allowed it. Done it. And spent 26 years standing at the son's right hand, wearing his grief like a coat, waiting for the day he'd do the same to the son. Adrian's hand holding the recorder was perfectly steady. His face in the dark was wet. 20 feet away, Victor Romano hung up the phone and stood in the middle of his safe room, in the one place in the world he trusted completely, and had no idea at all that the man he'd just condemned himself to was 6 feet away on the other side of a wall, having heard every word, and now knew not only the truth about the past, but the exact shape of the death Victor was planning for the future. And Adrian understood, crouched in that wall with tears on his face and his father's murder finally fully known, that the 6 quiet days were a lifetime ago, and the trap they'd built had worked far better than either of them had dared to hope, and far, far worse. Because now he had the truth. And now Victor was coming. And there was no version of what happened next where both of these men walked out of the ground alive. He came back to the apartment above the bakery just before dawn, and Emma knew the moment he walked through the door that something had changed in him that could never change back. She'd been waiting all night. She'd heard from Sal that he was out, that he was clear that the recorder had worked, but Sal's texts were flat factual, and they didn't tell her the thing she needed to know, which was whether Adrian Moretti was still the man who'd walked into that wall. And now he was standing in the doorway, and she had her answer, and it frightened her. "You got it," she said quietly. "The confession. You got it." "I got it." His voice was hollow. "Adrian." She came around the table. "What happened in there? What did he say?" He didn't answer right away. He crossed to the table and set the recorder down on it gently, like it was something that might go off, and then he sat down heavily in the chair, and he stared at his own hands. "My father didn't get betrayed," he said. "That's the word I used all these years, betrayed, like it was politics, like somebody made a deal and my father was on the wrong side of it." He looked up at her and his eyes were terrible. "Victor killed him. With his hands. Not arranged. Not ordered. Did it himself. And then he came to the funeral and he held my mother while she cried, and he put his arm around me. I was 23, and he told me he'd always look out for me." Adrian's voice cracked just slightly on the word. "And he meant it. That's the part I can't, he meant it. He looked after me for 26 years so that someday when it was useful, he could do to me exactly what he did to my father." Emma sank into the chair across from him. She didn't reach for him. "Some griefs you don't touch." "It's on the recording," she said. "All of it. All of it." Adrian let out a breath. "Everything you needed." Vandale on the phone, panicking, confirming the whole thing. Victor confirming he buried the evidence 8 years ago. Victor confirming he's the one who kept my father from ever tracing the money. And then, his jaw worked. Victor confirming he killed him, and confirming what he's planning to do to me, and to you. It's all there. Your paper trail just grew a voice. Emma looked at the recorder, this small, ordinary thing sitting on a table above a bakery, holding inside it enough to end 2 of the most powerful men in the state. "Then we won," she said. And even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true because of the way he was looking at her. "No," Adrian said. "We got what we needed. That's not the same as winning. Because now I have to decide what to do with it. And there are 2 men in me right now. Emma, and they want completely different things, and I don't know which one I am anymore." It was the first time he'd called her Emma. Not Ms. Callahan, just Emma. She noticed it and filed it away and said nothing. "Tell me both," she said. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "One of them," he said, "is the man I've been for 30 years. And that man knows exactly what to do. That man takes what he heard in that wall, and he finds Victor Romano, and he makes sure Victor spends the last hour of his life understanding precisely why it's happening. That man has waited 30 years for a face to put on his father's death, and now he has one, and everything in him. Everything is screaming to end it the way it started. With hands. Personally." His voice was very steady, which she'd learned was the most dangerous thing about him. "And I could do it. Tonight. I have the recording. I don't even need him alive anymore. Nobody in my world would blame me. Half of them would say it's overdue." "And the other man," Emma said. Adrian looked at her. "The other man," he said slowly, "spent 6 days in a house watching a woman who does it differently. Who chases the truth into daylight instead of into a hole. Who kept telling me the difference between catching a criminal and killing a man like it mattered." He almost smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "And that man knows something the first one doesn't want to hear, which is that if I kill Victor Romano, I prove Victor right." "What do you mean?" "For 26 years. Adrian said, "Victor ran everything from behind me. And do you know how he got away with it? He got away with it because he was betting I'd never look at the paper. He was betting that a man like me only knows one move, find someone to blame, and break them. He built his whole 30-year plan on the certainty that Adrian Moretti will always choose the hands over the head. He leaned forward. So if I go find him tonight and I kill him, I'm exactly the man he always knew I was. I'm the blunt instrument he pointed wherever he wanted for 26 years. My father's killer dies and dies knowing he was right about me to the very end, that I never grew past being the thing he used. Adrian's voice dropped. And I don't want to give him that. Emma, God help me, of all the things I want tonight, the thing I want most is to not give Victor Romano the satisfaction of being right about me. Emma felt her throat close. Then don't, she whispered. It's not that simple. Because there's you. He looked at her hard. Victor is coming for you. He said so on the recording in his own voice. He's going to find who pulled you out of that lake, and when he does, he's coming for both of us, and he's not going to wait for a courtroom. So it's not just about what I want to be, it's about keeping you alive. And the fastest, surest way to keep you alive is the way I know how. It always has been. His hands closed slowly. So tell me, Emma, you're the one who keeps talking about daylight in courtrooms. You tell me how daylight keeps you alive when there's a man out there who's going to spend every hour from now until he finds you hunting. Tell me how a recording protects you from Victor Romano's hands. And Emma understood that this was the real question. Not what was right in the abstract. What was right when the man who wanted you dead was already moving, and the only person who could stop him was asking you whether he was allowed to become a monster to do it. She thought about it for a long time. She owed him that. Here's what I know, she said finally. If you kill him, you're safe tonight. And I'm safe tonight. And then you spend the rest of your life being the man who did it, and Vandale scatters, and the truth about your father dies in that hole with Victor, because a dead man's confession on a recording is a lot easier to bury than a living man's testimony in a courtroom. You get revenge, and you lose the truth. Those are the two things you came for Adrian, and killing him gives you one and costs you the other. She held his eyes. You didn't spend 30 years wanting Victor dead. You spent 30 years wanting to know, and now you know. And the only way the whole world knows is if Victor Romano stands in a courtroom and it comes out of his mouth where people can hear it. Dead men don't testify. You told me that. The first night. You said it about me. Tools break, witnesses testify. Victor's your witness now. Don't turn your witness back into a tool. Adrian stared at her. You're using my own words against me, he said. You told me to, Emma said. You gave me the apartment. You said you'd rather I had a weapon and never used it. This is the weapon, your own words. I'm using it. And Adrian Moretti, the monster of the North Side, the man without mercy, put his face in his hands, and for a long moment he didn't say anything at all, and Emma sat with him in the gray light and let him be whatever he was becoming in the space between the two men he'd described. When he lifted his head, something had settled. There's a problem with your courtroom, he said, and his voice was steadier. Two problems, actually. The first is that the recording is illegal. I was in a wall in a building I don't own, taping a private conversation. No prosecutor can touch it. It's worthless in a court. I know, Emma said. I thought about that all night. The recording isn't evidence. It's a map. It tells us exactly what's true, so we know exactly where to dig for the things that are admissible. Victor said he buried the page 8 years ago. That means there was a real page, a real document, real proof, and buried doesn't mean destroyed, it means hidden. Men like Victor never destroy the thing that protects them. He kept it, somewhere. As insurance against Vandale, probably. We find that, and we don't need the recording. The recording just tells us it exists, and roughly where to look. Adrian was watching her with that expression again, the awe he tried to hide. And the second problem, he said, the second problem is bigger. Charles Vandale is a United States Senator. You don't hand a senator to the local police. He has people everywhere in the department, in the prosecutor's office, in the press. The moment you move against him through normal channels, he knows, and he uses every one of those people to make it disappear, and to make you disappear along with it. You can't fight a man like that from underneath. You have to come at him from above, from somewhere his money doesn't reach all at once before he can pull a single string. Federal, Emma said. You go federal. FBI. Someone with jurisdiction over a senator and no local strings for him to pull. And why? Adrian said quietly. Would the FBI ever in 1,000 years trust a mafia boss who walks in the door with a story about a senator and a 30-year-old murder and an analyst who's supposed to be dead? Emma opened her mouth, closed it. Closed. They wouldn't trust you, she said slowly. But they'd trust me. I'm exactly who they trust. I'm a certified financial analyst with 11 months of documented work, no record, no connection to your world, who got run off a road for finding something. I'm the witness. You're the... She stopped. The criminal, Adrian finished. Say it. It's true. You're the one they lock up, Emma said, and her voice had gone very small because she'd just followed the logic all the way to the end, and she didn't like where it went. That's the real cost, isn't it? That's the thing you haven't said. If we do this my way, courtrooms, federal daylight, all of it, then everything comes out. Not just Victor's crimes, not just Vandale's. Yours. 30 years of yours. You don't get to hand them the truth and keep your own hands hidden. The same daylight that catches them catches you. The silence in the little apartment was enormous. Adrian Moretti looked at her, and he didn't look away, and Emma realized he'd known this from the moment she'd started talking about courtrooms, maybe from the moment he'd pulled her out of the lake, and he'd let her walk all the way here on her own, because he wanted her to understand exactly what she was asking him to do. Yes, Adrian said simply. You'd go to prison. Almost certainly. For a long time. For the rest of my life, probably. I'm 53. He said it without drama, which somehow made it worse. That's the price of your daylight, Emma. That's why the first man in me wants the hands. The hands are free. Kill Victor, bury the truth. Walk away, keep everything. The daylight costs me everything I have. My freedom, my world, the rest of my life. He almost smiled. You've been telling me for a week to be the better man. And the joke is the better man goes to prison, and the monster goes home. That's the actual choice. Not good and evil in the abstract. My whole life against the truth about my father. That's the trade. Emma felt tears in her eyes and hated them. I can't ask you to do that, she said. I can't. That's not a fair thing to ask anyone. You didn't ask, Adrian said gently. You told me the truth about what my choices cost. That's different. And it's the thing nobody's done for me in 30 years. He leaned back. Everyone around me my whole life told me what I wanted to hear. Victor most of all. You're the first person who ever sat across from me and told me the real price of the thing I want. Even when the price is, you lose me. He held her eyes. Especially then. Emma didn't know what to do with the way her chest hurt. So which man are you? She whispered. Adrian was quiet for a long time. I keep thinking about my father, he said finally. 30 years I've carried him like a wound. And what did I do with all that grief? I became exactly what Victor needed me to be. Angry, blunt, predictable. I let my father's death turn me into the perfect weapon for the man who killed him. He looked at his hands again. And if I go kill Victor now, that's what I do with it forever. His whole life and mine, both of them just fuel. For being the thing Victor made me. He looked up. Or I do the one thing Victor never once in 26 years imagined I was capable of. I choose the head over the hands. I choose the truth over the revenge. I walk into a federal building and I put my whole life on the table to make sure the world knows what he did to my father, to you, to all of it. And I let them take me for my own sins, while they take him for his. His voice was steady and quiet and absolutely certain. And that is the one ending Victor Romano cannot survive, because he can survive dying. Men in our world die. What he can't survive is Adrian Moretti turning out to be a better man than he ever believed possible. That's the one thing that beats him, not his death, my change. Emma was crying now openly and not bothering to hide it. You're sure? she said. No, Adrian said. I'm terrified. But I'm sure it's right, which isn't the same as being sure I can do it, and I'm going to need you to not let me turn back. Because there's going to be a moment, probably, when Victor's finally in front of me, where the first man is going to wake up and want the hands, and I'm going to need someone in the room who'll say my own words back to me. Can you be that? Yes, Emma said. God, yes. Then that's the plan. He stood up, and something had lifted off him some weight he'd been carrying since long before she met him. We find the buried page. We take everything, your files, the page, my testimony, all of it to the one federal agent I can find who can't be bought and can't be reached by Vandale. And I trade the rest of my life for the truth. He picked up the recorder. And you get to go back to your sister, because that was always the deal. The day it's over, you go to her. And this is how it's over. But Emma was already shaking her head because a cold thought had arrived. Adrian, she said. The buried page, Victor's insurance. Where would he keep something like that? Adrian went still. Somewhere only he could reach, he said slowly. Somewhere he trusts completely. Somewhere no one in my world would ever look, because it's his, and it's safe, and... His face changed. The club. The room he goes to when everything's wrong. The one place he'd never sweep because he trusts it. A cold understanding. It's in the club, Emma. His insurance is in the same room I was standing outside of 6 feet away 4 hours ago. Then we go back, Emma said. No. Adrian's voice was hard. I go back. You've done the impossible part, you've built the case, you don't go anywhere near that building. Sal and I go tonight while Victor's still running around trying to find you, and we... His phone rang. He looked at it. And Emma watched his face, and she'd learned to read it now, and what she saw made her stomach drop through the floor. It's Sal, he said. But he didn't sound relieved. He sounded like a man bracing. He answered, speaker out of habit now. Boss. Sal's voice was tight and fast and wrong. Boss, I gotta make this quick. Victor found the doctor, Nico, the one who patched up the girl the first night. Adrian went white. How? He's good boss. He's been pulling threads all week and Nico's the one loose end. Nobody thought to cover because he doesn't ask questions. He doesn't know anything, but he knows one thing. He knows the girl was alive. He knows you brought her in. And Victor's got him. A breath. Victor's got Nico right now, boss. And Nico's a doctor. He's not a soldier. He's gonna talk. And the second he talks, Victor knows for certain it was you on that shore. And he knows the girl's alive, and he knows you've been playing him for a week. Where? Adrian said. One word, flat as a gravestone. The club. He took him to the club. A pause. Boss, there's more. Victor made a call 2 minutes ago, to Vandale. I couldn't get the words, but I got the length and the tone, and boss, it wasn't a panic call. It was a short one. Calm. The kind you make when you've stopped being scared because you've decided what you're gonna do. Sal's voice dropped. He knows. Or he's about to. And when Nico talks, Victor's not gonna hunt anymore. He's gonna come straight at you. Tonight. Adrian looked at Emma across the table, and Emma looked back at him, and in that single-held glance everything they'd built over the last hour, the plan, the daylight, the courtroom, the choice to be the better man collided head-on with the thing that was actually happening. Which was that a good man, who owed Adrian nothing, was about to be tortured for knowing that Emma Callahan had survived, and there was no version of the careful, patient, lawful plan that saved him, because the careful plan took days, and Nico had minutes. Adrian, Emma said quietly. The doctor. He saved my life that night, same as you did. I know. He's going to die for it, for helping me, unless someone goes and gets him. Tonight. Now. I know, Adrian said again, and Emma watched the two men inside him, the one who chose the head and the one who chose the hands, stop being a choice about the future and become a choice about the next 20 minutes. Because the careful plan, the courtroom, the daylight, the better man, all of it was built on time they no longer had. And the only man who could walk into Victor Romano's club tonight and pull Nico out of it before he broke was a man who knew that building knew that world, and knew exactly how to be the thing everyone was afraid of. The very thing Adrian had just decided he didn't want to be anymore. Adrian stood and reached into his coat, and Emma saw for the first time since the lake the shape of a weapon under his hand. And she understood that the man who'd spent the last hour deciding to choose daylight was about to walk straight back into the dark. Not because he'd changed his mind, but because a doctor who asked no questions had once asked none about her, and Adrian Moretti did not let people die for his mistakes. "Stay here," he said. "Lock the door. If I'm not back by morning, everything's on that laptop, and Sal knows the name of the agent. You finish it without me. You put it all in the light. Promise me." "Adrian." "Promise me, Emma." "I promise," she whispered. "Come back. You come back and do it yourself. You promised me the day it's over, I go to my sister. You don't get to make that promise and then not come back. Do you hear me? You come back." Adrian Moretti stood in the doorway of the small life he never got to live and looked at the woman he'd pulled out of a lake, and for just one moment, the monster and the man were the same man, and both of them were afraid, and both of them were going anyway. "I'll do my best," he said, and then he was gone down the stairs into the dark toward the one room where his father's killer waited with a doctor's life in his hands, and Emma Callahan turned the lock and sat down in front of the laptop that held everything and began with shaking hands to write down every single thing she knew, in case the man who saved her life didn't come back from trying to save someone else's. She lasted 11 minutes at the laptop before she stopped lying to herself. She'd been typing everything down exactly as he'd told her: the names, the accounts, the shape of the whole 30-year machine. And somewhere around the 11th minute, her hands stopped moving, and she sat very still, and she understood that she was writing a eulogy. That was what this was. She was documenting everything, so that when Adrian Moretti didn't come back, his death would have meant something. And the moment she understood that was the moment she knew she wasn't going to sit in that apartment and let it happen. She grabbed the burner phone and called Sal. "He told you to stay put," Sal said before she even spoke. "He told me a lot of things. Where are you?" "Outside the club. Emma, I'm not bringing you here." "Sal." She was already pulling on her coat. "Listen to me. He walked in there to save a man who saved my life. And you and I both know what happens to Adrian in that building. Victor's got his own people, his own walls, his own everything, and Adrian's one man with a gun and a bad idea. He's not going to win that. Not with force. Force is the thing Victor's ready for. So, what you're gonna win it? An accountant." "Yes," Emma said. "Because I have the one thing Victor can't fight with his men, and Adrian can't carry it in with a gun, and it's sitting on this laptop right now." She was moving toward the door. The recording. The confession. Vandale on the phone, Victor talking about the murder, all of it. Adrian went in there to trade the truth for the truth to come out in daylight, and then he threw that whole plan away to save Nico, and he walked in as the monster instead. But the monster loses in that room, Sal. The only thing that wins in that room is the thing Victor's most afraid of. Not a gun. The truth. Out loud. Where his own men can hear it. Sal was quiet for a second. "You want to walk into Victor Romano's club?" he said slowly, "and play him a recording of himself confessing to murder in front of his own people. Victor's people follow Victor because they think Adrian's a fading old man, and Victor's the real power. That's the story he's told them for years." Her voice was steady now, steadier than she felt. "So I'm going to change the story. In front of all of them. I'm going to let them hear what Victor really thinks of the man he spent 26 years pretending to serve. And I'm going to let them hear that he killed the last boss's father, and I'm going to make every man in that room ask himself whether he wants to follow the kind of man who does that to family." She reached the door. "Loyalty's the only currency Victor's got, Sal. I'm going to bankrupt him. Now are you going to drive me, or am I taking a cab to a Mafia club?" There was a long pause. "Get downstairs," Sal said. "I'm sending a car. And Emma, if this goes wrong—" "Then it was already going wrong," Emma said. "Adrian's already inside. I'm not making it worse. I might be the only thing that makes it better." Chum. Inside the club, Adrian Moretti had already found out how badly outnumbered he was. He'd come in through the service door he'd known about for 20 years. Quiet, careful, and he'd made it exactly as far as the bottom of the stairs, before he understood that Victor had been ready for him, not hoping ready, because there were 4 men waiting in the dark who should not have been there, and by the time Adrian's gun was up, 3 of theirs were already on him. They didn't kill him. That was the first thing that told him how bad it was. If Victor wanted him dead, he'd be dead. They took the gun, and they took him down the hall, and they put him in the room, the safe room, Victor's room, and there in a chair, with blood on his face and terror in his eyes, was Nico the doctor alive, and standing over him, calm as a Sunday morning, was Victor Romano. "There he is," Victor said warmly, turning. "There's my boss. Let the doctor go, Victor. He doesn't know anything worth knowing. He knows the girl was alive." Victor smiled. "He told me. Took a while, but he told me. He knows you brought her in bleeding and breathing 4 nights ago, which means you were on that shore, which means—" The smile didn't waver. "You've known for a week, Adrian. A whole week. And you called me old friend twice on the phone and thanked me for a job well done, and you never said a word." Something flickered behind his eyes, and for the first time in 26 years, Adrian saw what had always been underneath. "You played me. You. I didn't think you had it in you. Honestly, I'm a little proud." "You killed my father," Adrian said. The room went very quiet. Nico stopped breathing. The 4 men along the wall went still. Victor tilted his head. "So you do know," he said softly. "How much?" "All of it. Not arranged, not ordered. Your hands. And then 30 years of my mother's funeral and your arm around my shoulders, and I'll always look out for you." Adrian's voice never rose. It was the flat, cold, patient voice, the one Emma would have recognized. 26 years I trusted you more than my own blood, and every one of them was you waiting." "Not waiting," Victor corrected gently. "Building. You think I wanted this? I built you an empire, Adrian. I ran it clean and quiet from behind you for 2.5 decades. You got to be the king. You got to have the rules and the honor and the reputation. And I got to do the actual work of keeping it all standing from the shadows, where nobody ever said thank you." He crouched down to Adrian's eye level. "Your father was going to trace the money. He was going to find Charles, and Charles was going to burn, and Charles was the future, a lawyer with a name, a man who could put us somewhere real, somewhere legitimate, somewhere with senators and hospital wings, instead of just this. Your father would have thrown all that away over pride, so I made a choice. For the good of everything. And I have never once regretted it." He straightened. "The only thing I regret is that I taught you to be exactly good enough to figure it out." "You're going to prison," Adrian said. Victor laughed, really laughed. "Prison? You're going to put me in prison. Adrian, you're a mob boss tied to a chair in a club that doesn't officially exist with a gun on the floor and 4 of my men on the wall. There's no prison in your future. There's a shovel." He nodded at Nico. 2 shovels. I'm sorry about the doctor. I really am. He seems like a decent man. But decent men who know things are the most dangerous kind." He reached down and picked up Adrian's gun off the floor, checked it, and looked almost sad. "I wish it hadn't come to this. I did love you, you know, in my way. You were the best thing I ever built." And it was in that exact moment, with his own gun in his father's killer's hand, tied to a chair, out of moves, having thrown away the careful plan, and the daylight, and everything. Emma had helped him choose, having walked back into the dark, to save one man, and found only his own grave. That Adrian Moretti heard the door open behind him. And a voice he knew said into the silence, "Before you do that, you should probably hear something first." Every head in the room turned. Emma Callahan stood in the doorway, soaking wet from nothing, pale, terrified, entirely out of place, holding up a phone. And Victor Romano's face, for the first time in 30 years, came completely apart. "You," he breathed. How are you?" "Alive," Emma said. Her voice was shaking. She didn't care. "Yeah, I keep hearing that. Turns out somebody pulled me out of your lake. She looked at Adrian tied to the chair, blood on his face, and something crossed her expression, and then she looked back at Victor and she pressed a button on the phone. And Victor Romano's own voice filled the room. Don't you put this on me, Charles. I have kept this quiet for 3 decades. When Moretti's father started asking questions about where his money went, who fixed that? Charles, who made sure the old man never traced it back to you? Me. I did. Turn it off, Victor said. I find the girl, and this time I don't hand it to somebody else. I do it myself. Turn it off. 30 years I let Adrian think he was in charge. And if it comes down to him or me, Charles, it was always going to come down to him or me. I'm not going in the ground for Adrian Moretti's father a second time. Emma stopped it there. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the world. She wasn't looking at Victor. She'd figured that out in the car on the way over. Gripping the seat, terrified, she'd realized that the play wasn't Victor. Victor was already lost. You don't shame a man who feels no shame. The play was the 4 men along the wall. So she looked at them, one at a time. The way she'd look at a spreadsheet that didn't add up. He killed the last boss's father, she said to them. Quiet, reasonable, the accountant laying out the numbers. With his own hands, family. And then he stood at the funeral and lied to the son's face for 26 years, and he just told a senator on the phone that the second it was useful, he'd put that son in the ground too. She let it sit. You all followed him because he told you he was loyal to Adrian. You just heard what his loyalty is worth. So ask yourselves one question. If he'd do that to the man he called family for 26 years. She looked from face to face. What exactly do you think he's going to do to you the day you stop being useful? Nobody moved, but something moved in them. Emma saw it, the tiny shift, the flicker of men recalculating, men who lived and died on loyalty, realizing they'd sworn theirs to a man who had none. It wasn't much. It was everything. She's got a recording. Victor said fast now, his voice climbing back towards smooth and not quite making it. So what? It's nothing. It's not admissible. It's not she made it in a wall. It's garbage in a courtroom. She knows it, she's not here for a courtroom. He was talking too fast. She's here because it's the only card she's got, and it's a bluff, and it's not for a courtroom, Emma agreed. You're right. It's illegal. Worthless to a prosecutor. She almost smiled. It was never for a prosecutor, Victor. It was for them. She nodded at the 4 men. The courtroom gets something else. And that was when Sal came through the door behind her with 6 men of his own. Adrian's men. The ones who'd been loyal to the boss and not the advisor. The ones Sal had spent the whole drive over calling. And suddenly the math in the room was very different. And the 4 men along the wall who had just heard exactly what Victor Romano thought of loyalty made their choice in the space of a breath. They stood down. Victor watched it happen. Watched his own men lower their eyes and step back. Watched 26 years of careful power evaporate in the 90 seconds it took to play his own voice back to him. And he did the thing that men like Victor always do at the end when the empire's gone and the smooth voice fails. He raised the gun. Adrian's gun. And he pointed it not at Sal, not at his own men, not at Emma. He pointed it at Adrian. No. He said, very calm now, very final. No, if this is how it ends, then it ends the way it started. With my hands on a Moretti. His finger tightened. I'm sorry, son. You really were the best thing I ever... Victor. It was Adrian, still tied to the chair. Calm. Looking up at the man about to kill him with something that wasn't fear and wasn't hate. Something worse for Victor. Something like pity. You spent 30 years, Adrian said quietly, betting I'd never be anything but the weapon you made. And you were almost right. An hour ago, I was going to come here and kill you with my hands, and you'd have died knowing you were right about me to the end. He held Victor's eyes. But I'm not going to give you that. I'm not going to be the thing you built. So go ahead. Pull it. and die knowing the last thing you ever did was prove that the son turned out to be a better man than the father's killer ever believed he could be. That's the only ending you can't survive, Victor. Not my death, my choice. Pull the trigger. You still lose. Victor Romano stood there with the gun on Adrian Moretti, and for one long, terrible second, Emma was certain he was going to do it. And then something in Victor's face collapsed. Not remorse, he never had that, but something more useful and more human. The simple, crushing understanding that Adrian was right, that killing him now was Adrian winning, that there was no version of this room where Victor got to be the man he'd always believed he was. His hand wavered, and in that wavering half-second, Sal crossed the room and took the gun out of his hand, and it was over. And Victor Romano didn't fight it because there was nothing left in him to fight with. The empire was gone. The men were gone. The smooth voice was gone. All that was left was an old man in a room full of people who finally knew exactly what he was. Emma ran to Adrian and got the ropes off his wrists, and Nico Fried was already checking the blood on Adrian's face with shaking hands and a doctor's reflexes muttering that it looked worse than it was, and Adrian caught Emma's hand as she worked and held it just for a second. "You were supposed to stay in the apartment," he said. "You were supposed to come back," Emma said. "We both broke our promises. Call it even." The federal agent Adrian had chosen was a woman named Diane Okafor, who had spent 9 years trying to touch Charles Vandale and never once getting close enough, and who listened to the whole thing in a plain room across a plain table without changing her expression once. She couldn't use the recording. Emma had told her that going in, illegal, inadmissible, worthless in court. But the recording was never the point. The recording was the map. It told Okafor exactly where Victor Romano had buried his insurance 8 years ago. And Victor's insurance, the real document, the original proof kept all those years in the safe room of the club as protection against Vandale, was admissible. Beautifully, completely admissible. Charles Vandale's signature on money that had started its life as a stolen pension fund. The thing Emma had spent 11 months chasing and never quite reached because it had been sitting the whole time in the one place no auditor could ever look. And there was Victor himself, who, when he understood that Adrian had chosen daylight, that there would be no shovels and no lake, that he was going to a courtroom and not a hole, did the last thing anyone expected. He talked. All of it. Not out of remorse, out of spite. Because if Adrian got to be the better man, then Victor was damned if Charles Vandale got to keep his Senate seat and his clean name while Victor rotted. If Victor was going down, the senator was going down with him, and Victor Romano had 30 years of receipts. Why? Okafor asked Adrian at the end in that plain room. "You understand what you're handing me. There's enough here to take down a senator and a whole criminal operation. And a good chunk of it is you. You're not walking out of this a free man, Mr. Moretti. You know that." "I know that," Adrian said. "Then why?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Because a long time ago," he said, "somebody I trusted killed my father to protect a lie, and I spent 30 years becoming exactly the kind of man he needed me to be so the lie could keep living. And a few weeks ago, I pulled a woman out of a lake who spent the whole time she knew me telling me the difference between the man I was and the man I could have been." He glanced at Emma. "I'm 53. I don't have 30 more years to figure out which one I want to be. So I'm choosing now, while it still costs me something. Because a choice that costs you nothing isn't worth anything." Okafor looked at him for a long moment. "It's going to cost you a lot," she said. "Good," Adrian said. "Then it means something." They arrested Charles Vandale on the floor of a fundraiser in front of 200 donors and a wall of cameras, and it was the kind of fall that gets remembered. A United States senator, a decorated public servant, a name on hospital wings and scholarship funds, revealed all at once as the architect of a 30-year criminal empire built on a murdered man's stolen money. Vandale International came apart in a week. The politicians who'd taken the clean money spent the next year explaining themselves. The whole rotten structure, 3 decades in the building, collapsed the way rotten things do once the light finally hits them, fast and completely and long overdue. Victor Romano was convicted of the murder of Adrian's father, along with a great many other things, and he went to prison, and he did not come out. And Adrian Moretti stood in a courtroom and answered for 30 years of his own life, and he did not lie, and he did not minimize. And when it was done, they took him away for a long time. Not the rest of his life in the end, because he'd handed them everything, and a fair judge accounted for it, but long enough that both he and Emma understood what the number meant. Long enough that when he walked back out, the world would be a different one, and so would they. Emma was there for every day of it. She hadn't planned to be. The deal had always been that the day it was over, she went back to her life, and she was free now. Free and cleared and celebrated the analyst who'd brought down a senator with every door she'd ever wanted suddenly open. She could have walked away clean. She didn't. The day it was truly over. The day the last verdict came down, and there was nothing left to be afraid of. She did the thing she'd promised herself in the sinking car. The thing she'd held on to through 6 days as a ghost, and every terrible hour after. She went to her sister. Rachel opened the door and saw a woman she'd buried. A woman she'd grieved, a woman she'd identified an empty car for and mourned with an empty casket. And for a long moment, Rachel couldn't speak at all. And then, the two of them were on the floor of the doorway, holding on to each other, both of them saying the same broken things over and over, and Emma understood that this right here, was the thing she'd nearly drowned to keep the thing worth every impossible choice, the reason any of it had mattered. "I thought you were gone," Rachel kept saying. "I thought you were gone." "I know," Emma whispered. "I know. But somebody found me. Somebody pulled me out." Months later, Emma went back to the lake. She didn't fully know why. She stood at the water's edge at the exact place where the barrier had opened onto 60 feet of freezing dark, and she made herself remember it. The pedal going soft, the parking brake coming off in her hand, the water at her collarbone, the certainty that no one was coming, that she was going to die alone and afraid in the cold, and that the world would never even know it had been murder. And then she made herself remember the light, the shape hitting the water, the hand through the broken glass, and the voice against her ear, low and furious and steady. "I've got you. Stop fighting me. I've got you." The most feared man in the city had gone into freezing black water for a stranger he had every reason to leave behind. And it had cost him everything, his empire, his freedom, the whole life he'd built. He'd traded all of it in the end, not for power and not for revenge, but for the truth, and for the chance to be just once, before it was too late, the better of the two men who'd lived inside him his whole life. Emma understood something standing there that she would spend the rest of her life being grateful she'd learned. People are not the worst thing they've ever done, and they are not the reputation the world hands them, and the truth of a person is not written in what others say about them, or even in their own past. The truth of a person is written in what they choose, when the choosing is hard, and costs them everything, and no one would ever know if they chose the easy way instead. Adrian Moretti had spent 30 years being the monster the world believed him to be. And when the one moment came that would define him forever, tied to a chair, his father's killer in front of him, his own gun in the wrong hand, every reason in the world to be the weapon he'd always been, he had chosen instead to be the man who told the truth. Even when the truth took everything. Emma looked out over the water one last time at the place she was supposed to have died, and she was not afraid of it anymore. Because she finally understood the thing the whole story had been trying to teach her, from the very first freezing second, that sometimes the person the whole world tells you to fear is the one person willing to go into the dark water after you, and that the man who saved her life was never the monster at all, but a man searching all along for the truth, and for the courage to become someone worthy of having found it. And that truth, once it finally reaches the light, is the one thing in this world that no lie, no empire, and no amount of fear can ever bury again.